Most musicians know that repetition is important. It's what makes a song stick. In fact, without repetition, it's not really a song. It's more like an improvisation. But what most people never realize is that there are different types of repetition. And one of them has been used by the most successful songwriters for decades, yet no one's ever noticed it. Until now. You might think that repetition is obvious, and I'm pretty sure you've never consciously thought about the fact that there are different types of it. And I know this because no songwriting courses or books ever talk about them. In this video, I'm going to show you a very specific and unique type of repetition that you've already heard a million times but never realized. Your brain recognizes the pattern subconsciously, but it's not always obvious. So in order to understand this special type of repetition, first, let's talk about the simple, most obvious type of repetition. This is what I call the perfect repetition. So this is when you repeat a motif exactly the same way. Same melody notes, same rhythm, and most of the time the same lyrics and the same placement of the bar. And this last part is the key to understanding our special type of repetition. Let's see an example for the simple, perfect repetition. If you start the motif on the first beat, the repetition also comes on the first beat in the next bar. Exactly the same notes, same rhythm. Or maybe the repetition starts on beat 3. It's basically the same thing, it's still a perfect repetition. So there's nothing special happening here. But what do you do if this simple repetition is just boring? This is when the secret formula comes in. The formula is basically what I call the rhythmically offset repetition. Remember that the perfect repetition is when you start the repetition at the same placement in the bar. But with the rhythmically offset repetition, you make something unexpected. You bring the repetition earlier. And there are different variations of this, but the formula is almost always the same. Play a motif, count to 3 from the first note, and then repeat the same motif. So because we are in 4/4 time signature, with a simple repetition we would count to 4 and then repeat the motif. But with the rhythmically offset repetition, we only count to 3, and that brings the repetition earlier than the listener would expect. And the reason nobody noticed this is that it's not always the same motif. So it might be completely different melody notes, different rhythm, different lyrics, different placement of the bar, but the formula is always the same. If you start the motif on the first beat, then the repetition starts 3 beats from the first note on the 4. But if you start the motif on the second beat, the repetition comes on the first beat of the next bar. So you can start the motif anywhere in the bar, the repetition always comes 3 beats from the first note. So let's see some real life examples. One of the most obvious examples is in Chandelier by Sia. She basically tells us in the lyrics what's happening. So the song is in 4/4 time signature, but she only counts to 3 before making the exact same repetition. One of the earliest examples I've found for this pattern is in the song Salt Peanuts by jazz musician Dizzy Gillespie from 1941. In this one, the first motif starts on the second beat of the bar, so that's where we start the counting. You can find the formula in Taylor Swift's and also Ed Sheeran's biggest hits. In Shake It Off by Taylor Swift, it's basically the main hook and the title of the song. In Shape of You by Ed Sheeran, it's a little bit less obvious, it's hidden in the verse, but it's the exact same formula. So the motif starts on the third beat of the bar, that's where we start the counting. Michael Jackson used this formula in many of his songs. For example, it's in Man in the Mirror, where it starts on the second beat. In Smooth Criminal, and he used the formula in the iconic song Black or White. In this song, it's not in the vocal melody, but in the main guitar riff. Although the repetition in this case is not with the exact same notes, it's more like a rhythmic repetition, but the formula is the same. Now listen to how the same guitar riff would sound if the repetition would be at the same placement of the bar. So instead of a rhythmically offset repetition, it would be just a simple repetition. So the repetition doesn't come earlier than expected. It immediately makes this guitar riff boring and forgettable. So this offsetting rhythm makes it much more interesting. And it also makes it so unique that you can instantly recognize the song just from the guitar riff. It's also in Fire to the Rain by Adele, in New Rules by Dua Lipa, I Don't Care by Ed Sheeran and Justin Bieber. It's in the vocal melody in the song Under Pressure by Queen. It's in Viva La Vida by Coldplay. And it's also in the brass section in Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars. So these are just a few examples so you get the idea, but it's really everywhere for decades now. But before you jump into making a song with this formula, I have some bad news. Because here's the crazy part. This formula doesn't really work anymore. The reason it worked for a while is that it broke the pattern. It did something different from what the listener expected. What people expected was a simple, perfect repetition. And this formula made the repetition exciting by shifting the repetition earlier than expected. So at first it broke the pattern. But the problem now is that it became the pattern. It became an overused formula, so it's predictable and cliche. So it makes a song sound generic if you use it today. Because despite what everyone believes, that today's hit songs are very formulaic, the vibe today is actually about avoiding sounding formulaic. Using those typical pop formulas is very 2015, those typical anthemic pop songs, the peak era of Max Martin, Ed Sheeran and Taylor Swift. Now you might say that these artists are still on the charts today, which is true, but this is because they already have tens of millions of followers. But there's actually a shift happening in songwriting, and if you, as a new or unknown artist, write those typical formulaic songs, your song will most likely fail. Because using the same songwriting tools will just make your music sound generic. This is what the younger generation call NPC music. Something you would hear in a mall or from the radio. So if you use this formula today, it will just sound like we already heard this a million times. So if you want to learn what works today, I actually made a complete songwriting course about it. You can find the link in the description. And if you like this video, make sure to subscribe so I know to make more videos like this.